folks, and welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. I'm Tom Jacobs and have the pleasure of chairing the Select Board right now. It's actually our meeting is being held on December 10th, 2018, and I'm surprised there's so many folks that want to come out and not be celebrating the holiday like I already have. A couple of housekeeping details, but we always start our meeting with the introduction of the select board that you have elected, starting down with our town manager, Stuart Hurd.
Thank you, Stuart Hurd, town manager.
Yep.
Good evening. Thanks so much for coming. And Jean Connor.
Hello, Carson Thurber.
Good evening, Jim Carroll.
Good evening, I'm Donald Campbell.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, Chad Gordon.
Nancy Loud, Secretary.
Great. Thank you, one and all. Thanks for being here, and thank you, folks, for coming out, and Cat TV for you folks participating on our local access channel. And there are probably some folks that would want to write to the FTC and suggest how important this local access is to our community. I think the mic is accurate. Is that open still for comment?
Friday, 11:59 p.m.
Okay. And if someone wants to get in touch with Cat TV for more information, they should do that on the website or what?
Call.
Okay. Okay. Great. Good. We start each meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, and Jim, would you lead us tonight?
Yes. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Jim. Just a couple of things before we get into the agenda. It should be noted that item number 6 on the agenda, dealing with the marketing plan, is not going to be discussed tonight. So that is not in the for discussion. I think that is actually going to be coming before us on January 10th. Is that right? Just do something in that?
I think it's the 14th.
14th, I'm sorry, I get that first meeting in January, which is January 14th. Also, I want to note for the record that the Vermont Chamber of Commerce recently had an award dinner, and they provided a couple of awards to individuals from our region. 3 of them are Paul Caraccio, Manchester Business Associates, TPW Real Estate, Bill Colvin, VCRC and VCIC, and John Shanahan, Bennington Downtown Alliance. And that award was for, as described, going above and beyond in their job, industry, or community, thus contributing to a more vibrant state for Vermonters to work, live, and play. Congratulations to everyone, including John, who I see here tonight. The other matter that's not on the agenda is I just want to let the folks know, both the community and those here, that there's some discussion about the Y taking over the rec center. I just want to make it clear, crystal clear, that the Y is not taking over the rec center. We've entered into an agreement for an evaluation of our programs and recommendations by the YMCA of Pittsfield through the interim executive director,
Jessica Rumlow.
Right, Jessica Romano, to act as an interim executive director. What happens with that is up to the evaluation report and up to the board to hear that report and decide what, if anything, it wants to do in the future. It's just very important that the message is delivered that this is not a turning over of our recreation center, which is near and dear to us. So that's all I have. Out of order. We have a consent agenda. Minutes of November 26, 2018, and the warrants which have been circulated. I'll entertain a motion to have the consent agenda adopted.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? And I believe a couple of the members were absent, will probably be abstaining from those minutes. Am I accurate in that?
I will be.
Okay. And Jim, you were away too? Mm-hmm. Okay. So all those in favor and present and voting to consent agenda signify by aye. Aye. but there'll be 2 abstentions noted relative to the minutes of November 26. Okay. The next item, which is important for all of us, is the citizens' public comment period. We normally set aside about 15 minutes or so for folks to comment and have a very brief discussion with the Select Board on matters that are not on the agenda, but maybe highlights or previews of coming attractions. But it gives us at least an opportunity to have a dialogue relative to matters that are not on the agenda for discussion and consideration tonight. The first name is William Bill Stewart, Morgan Springs. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Select Board, Water Board, town folks. How is everyone tonight?
Good.
Well, I'm here again to bring up the topic of the Morgan Spring. Now, I understand I see there's been a lot of work done towards it, and I know you're working towards getting it better and stopping the problem that goes on in the residential area. But another problem has arisen in the problem, the fact that now that we're going to move this to a new area, I hear that there's going to be another problem of where the area is going to be. Now, the problem for the last 15 years that I've been discussing with everybody is the problem of the tractor-trailer traffic in a residential area, in a spot where a water shed should not be, delivering water to tractor-trailers. So now, I understand that it's being moved to another spot, but can you give any details or any information on what's going on? Because it's been under a cloak of secrecy here now for probably about a good couple months.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe if we don't have some answers on it, that maybe we should have a public forum on this topic about our water being sold to Crystal Rock.
Okay. I can't speak to the water being sold to Crystal Rock, but as far as the potential relocation of the depot, that is under active consideration and under contract. Contract has a number of conditions, which at this particular point in time, we really shouldn't talk about until we find out if those conditions can be met or not, because there may not be anything going forward on that area. Right. So,
all right. So, with that being said, I'm asking right now for an answer from our Select Board that the Morgan Spring entrance on Bradford Street, if this does not go through and this does not work out, that contract will not be renegotiated or redone at that site at Morgan Spring, Bradford Street.
I know for a fact that I'm not going to be on board in 2003. Is that the next, when it comes up for renewal?
3 years.
Yeah, it's 2023.
20, okay. That's going to be a totally new contract with new distributors, new opportunities, and also, as you reference, whether or not that depot should be in a residential neighborhood.
Correct.
And there are a lot of considerations that will have to go forward, but I can tell you...
You do know how the contract was born, and it was not born of anything normal that would go on in any other municipality in any town that I've ever heard of. But anyway, that's besides the point.
It's your
Getting back
opinion.
to the matter that what if this does not get moved? Then what?
We have to have a further discussion.
Well, that's why I'm saying I'm asking right now that we set aside a date for a public referendum on this so that the public can put their vote in on what's going to happen with our water. Because in this day and age, we are in a PFOA crisis in this town, and the only natural pure source of water is right across the street from my house. The amount of water that flows out of that, the almost 2 million gallons a day overflow out of that water aquifer. And if we can't have a problem that now that Crystal Rock is double dipping, because we got to pay taxes to maintain the water aquifer, we pay salaries to all the employees. By the time we're through with that, we're not making any money what we're paying out right now. And to double the traffic up to make a single set, because we have to buy our water back from Crystal Rock, I think that we should be able to have access to our own water. And the crisis that we have, the PFOA crisis around us, it's our water. It's the town's water. It's not Crystal Rock's water or our town management's water.
Yeah, I totally agree. I join with you, and I think many of the members of the Board of Selectors feel the same. But we do have a contractual arrangement, which I can tell you is going to be open for more than renegotiation. It's going to be open for consideration as far as where the depot is and what organizations would be contracted for, and also what the town gets back. That is, you have said, and I've heard others say, that this is basically liquid gold.
It is liquid
and it
gold.
is. And frankly, I expect this town to benefit from it.
Tom?
I'm hoping that we can have some kind of agreement on this, because it doesn't seem that we have like an even agreement. I hear some do and some don't. You know, I don't know what the conflict is between it, but it is the purest source of water anywheres around. And it's our water, and I don't think Crystal Rock should have control of our water again, because they had control of it right up to now. They own and control our water.
Stuart's trying to get in. I don't know how much of a conversation you want to make.
Yeah, I should note that the Development Review Board has granted preliminary approval for the new site and the new site plan that was presented to them, was it a week ago? And I don't know where Dan is sitting, but probably a week or so ago. So we have preliminary approval on the new location, which is across from Johnny Suds facility. And I think there's a second public hearing on that particular permit that is required under our land use regulations. So that is moving forward.
But it's still under contract with other conditions and contingencies.
If in fact we get a permit to relocate and we negotiate, we will be negotiating all new deals with whoever wants to purchase our water.
Okay.
All right, so
Stand by.
that being said,
Yep.
I'm still asking the question. I would like a referendum, a public referendum on this water topic before March. Because I've had more than hundreds of people I've talked to that don't know about it, that I've told about. The problem is no one knows about this problem.
Okay, we'll take this under advisement, Bill.
Okay?
Thank you.
Stuart, could you just say again, where did you mention where the new spot?
It's on property currently owned by Scarafoni Real Estate. It's directly across, it's on East Main Street, directly across from where Johnny Suds is located, at the corner of Bradford and Main.
Oh,
Okay. I'm going to take a little bit out of order, but John Hale.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm Johnny Suds.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Hope you're closer, please.
Go ahead, John.
John Hale from Hale Resources, President and CEO. So first off, a little off the topic from what Bill was talking about, I wanted to tell you that on November 20th, we were given our award letter for the Vermont Community Development Block Grant, and we are in the process. It was for $650,000, and I want to say thank you to everybody for supporting us on that application. And
It's the first one for a proprietary undertaking in the state of Vermont.
yes, it is.
Thank you.
But thank
Thanks
you for your support,
Thank you.
and we'll be back to talk about the conditions on our grant.
That's the good news.
That's the good news. So, the bad news. So, I'm aware of the transfer station being moved across the street from Johnny Suds, 747 Main Street. And we have concerns. There's 30 employees in that building. We have hundreds of customers over the course of a week. There's 2 entrances to parking lots. There's a 3-way intersection of Bradford Street and Main Street. There's 4 driveways in that area. And with 20 18-wheeler tractor trailers coming in and out of there, not a crosswalk, which I understand that they're planning a crosswalk after we raised our question. I want to say we object to this. I mean, we feel as though that this kind of traffic is going to jeopardize the safety of our employees, of our customers, and that this is not forward thinking. This is not taking the bull by the horns and coming up with a solution of trucks going through our town. They drive up Scott Street, Bradford Street, County Street. They do not come from the highway. I've followed them through the intersection of the 4 corners, taking a left to go to Massachusetts.
I've done the
so. You know, it is a problem for everybody, and I don't think that this is going to solve the problem. I think this is just going to move the problem. So we need to collaborate here and have some forward thinking about how to fix the solution, have a solution for this, not just move the problem. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
I'm sorry, who was? Michelle. Okay, sorry. I apologize for that, Michelle.
So, good evening, Select Board members. My name's Michelle Alexander. I've spoken to most of you individually. I'm a Bennington resident representing the 350.org climate activists group, advocates group of Bennington, and many of them are here with me tonight as well as some supporting community members. So we're here tonight to take action on the problem of plastics. Single-use plastic bags in our environment and in our waste stream. As we know, stores in our areas bag our groceries and supplies in these single-use plastic bags. One shopping trip may fill a shopping cart with over 20 plastic bags that are used on an average from 12 to 20 minutes. In the United States, only 1% of these shopping bags are returned for recycling. One of the reasons being that they tend to jam up the recycling equipment. So this makes 100 billion plastic bags thrown away annually in the United States. To make these bags, it takes 10 million barrels of oil. Yes, that's 10 million barrels of oil to make bags that are used once, thrown away, where they exist for hundreds of years. So on January 14th, I'm going to be talking in more detail and showing a PowerPoint presentation showing the deleterious effects to humans, animals, and our environment from all of these plastic bags. In the United States, single-use plastic bags have been banned in the entire state of California and Hawaii. Additionally, in the Northeast, cities and towns and states that border Vermont have bag bans and fees imposed for the use of single-use plastic bags. For example, our neighbor, Williamstown, Mass., has a ban, with Albany, New York, soon to follow. Additionally, plastic bags are banned in entire New York City, in 9 other cities and towns in New York State, with Dutchess County just being on the news today with an ordinance soon to be passed. And in Vermont, Brattleboro has a townwide ordinance banning single-use bags, with Wilmington and Montpelier soon to follow. So through some discussions with Michael Batcher with the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, that alliance is not able to pass an ordinance.
Right.
Okay, so this needs to be passed per town. And as a group, we strongly believe in community collaboration and public education. So as I stated in the January 14th meeting, I'll be explaining in more detail the effects from these single-use plastic bags. Our goal today is not to ask you to solve this problem alone or right away, but rather we'd like to invite you all to help us to work together as a community to create an ordinance where there's been input from everyone in the community. And we thank you for your time.
Great. That's
Thank you. Well spoken.
very nice preview, a trailer of... Thanks, Michelle. And also, during the period between now and the 14th, I would request that board members do some of your own research and homework, so that when we get educated, we'll at least have the basis of the discussion. And many of us, I think, have our own personal observations right now and views on how this might be responded to. But I think we do need to have a real education for the entire community. Stu, I know we talked about the county, and I expect that's also ongoing. I'm not sure about their meeting relative to 14th. Is there going to be?
January 16th.
16th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we'll be ahead of that dialogue, but look forward to.
Yeah, what the Solid Waste Alliance is attempting to do is come up with an ordinance that is the same countywide. Yes, it has to be adopted by each community, but just as we did with some of the solid waste ordinances that we amended, that was done countywide, so everyone's speaking with the same voice.
Great. I'm looking forward to having this board deal with it proactively and ASAP. But really, thank you, folks, for your interest. It's a small part of our environment and where we live, but we've got to start. And we can. Okay, and I'm sorry.
It's a big part. It's not a small part.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't express it the way you would like to hear it, but frankly, I have the chair. So you can come on the 14th and talk about how big it is from your perspective, but there's a lot that we can do as a community. So I'm looking forward to having everyone come and speak and with enthusiasm to the issue. And thank you very much. on that issue. The next, we do have another speaker. This is Jack. Okay, Jack. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
One second. So, my name is Jack. Pleasure to meet all of you.
What's your last name, Jack?
Hurley, Hurley.
Yeah, great.
I've lived in this town for my whole life pretty much, except for like a couple years when I was a toddler. Though I agree with we should work towards a way of being environmentally friendly, I don't necessarily agree with an outright ban on single-use plastic bags or imposing a fee on the consumer. With that being said, if you were to look at a 2017 International Coast Cleanup done by the Ocean Conservancy, cigarette butts were the top place with 2.4 million cleaned up, and plastic grocery bags only ranking 5th at 757,523. But in the US, grocery bags only rank 8th at 96,815. So as much as I agree that being environmentally friendly is a good idea, I think we could be putting efforts into a better cleanup plan. So like we could focus more on plastic beverage bottles. That ranks 4th with over 242,534 found in a 2018 study. Another fun fact that I'd like to add is, like was mentioned earlier, Brattleboro put this ordinance and this ban out, and Hannaford had imposed a 5-cent fee for their paper bags. And the Vermont Digger put an article out on, I want to say October 14th, I could be wrong by the day, but it was within the month of October, and still fewer than 15% invested in long-term reusable bags. So it would seem like the people love the idea of being environmentally friendly, but they're not going to go shell out 15, 10 bucks or even 20 bucks for a reusable bag, when you can go online and get one reusable bag for almost $2. Or if you get like 20, you can get them for almost $1.25 a piece. So it's always cheaper to get something online.
Okay. Again, let's not get into the presentation discussion.
I just wanted to state that the idea of banning and putting a fee on the consumers is going to agitate consumers, and I think we need to find another approach at being environmentally friendly and trying to clean up the plastic use. So like an idea that I proposed to a couple of my friends is...
Okay. Save it till the 14th, okay?
All right.
Because right now...
16th?
No, 14th. 14th, yeah. 14th. Come back, you bet.
Positive?
Yes.
All right. But I just wanted to point out that there are
other options.
better solutions, and that I think we should really look at other solutions than just putting a ban or putting a fee on the consumer's level. Because at this point, if this ban was to go through like tomorrow, I'd probably just do all my shopping online and save maybe like 20 bucks a week if I was to just shop online than to shop locally.
Let's talk about it. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments tonight. Let's see if I've got Will Shepherd. I'm sorry. Will? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Will Shepherd. I'm a student at Bennington College, and I'd like to kind of echo some of the statements that Michelle said, as well as, if I can, respond to what Jack was saying.
No, this is not a debate, it's not an exchange. If you would like to just have, as I said, this is not an agenda item. In fact, I've given probably more leeway than I should, and my colleagues will remind me, if not today, tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So I really look forward to the dialogue, the discussion, the debate, and the options that are potentially available to our community.
Right. So I'll save everything for the January 16th.
You bet. Keep your ammo dry.
I'm sorry?
Keep your ammo dry.
Yes,
okay.
I will. I would just like to express that some students and I have gone around to many of the businesses in town, and we find that there's a lot of support towards banning plastic bags, particularly at the college. There's an overwhelming amount of support. And so we do think it's a really prevalent issue that we as a community, we can address.
Excuse me, Tom.
Like Michelle was.
Will you and your fellow students be here in January?
We will not be, but one of our professors, who's a former administrator at the EPA, Judith Enck, she will be.
Okay.
And so she'll be present at that meeting.
You trust her with that responsibility?
Oh, very much so.
Right.
You guys might want to get, signatures or something like that, just to kind of show the support of the students.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, actually, we're already collecting signatures.
Great.
And we have those for you.
That's really appreciated. Thank you for taking the time tonight.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Will. Nancy White.
Hi, I'm Nancy White. I was disappointed to read the article on poverty in the Banner on Saturday, and it neglected to mention that the nonprofits will be seeking $1 million from the local taxpayers in our next budget. For those of us who have lived here, we have always supported the nonprofits. Over the last 30 years, a lot of them have been created more recently. And this money we've paid, we thought it was going to lift people out of poverty and lower the poverty level in this town. But all the poverty level does in Bennington is continue to climb. We've supported a wide variety of housing in this town for 50 years, many projects and programs, but the problem with Bennington today is it becomes easier and easier for people to move here from outside the town and state and immediately get assistance. And those of us who own homes, we've tried to help people for a decade, our taxes continue to go up. When I look at your economic development plans for the future, they're all based on subsidies and taxes. There aren't any jobs being created to offset all this spending. And I think that's a big reason why when the mayoral form of government is back on the ballot in March, I think it's going to have a very good chance to pass. I look at the Putnam project. Not one new private sector job has been announced for a $53 million project. How will the people support themselves that will be moving into there?
That's interesting, your approach. I don't know if any part of it is based upon real fact other than opinion. And frankly, as far as the Putnam project, the shovel has not even broken the ground yet. I would suggest to you that you might want to, if you have any spirit of optimism, you might join in that to find out, to make sure that, in fact, it actually becomes a vital part of our community and the economic scene. That's all I can do as far as
20 years
response.
ago, housing wasn't considered economic development in Bennington. If you look back on select board meeting notes, you will read it. And if you read the comments from Diane Binnick, who was the head of affordable housing at that time, she said they didn't bundle their properties together. They spread them around town. And I don't know, if you're not creating jobs, how will people support themselves?
I can't comment any more than I just said. Anybody else would like to enter a
I
conversation?
don't think this is a debate at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I think it should be known, the last I knew that the poverty level in Bennington, in the town of Bennington, was over 20%. And I've heard no plan from anybody what you're going to do to address poverty. It's not fair to our school system. It's not fair that homeowners will be losing their homes over the next decade as you drive our taxes up. So somebody has to do something to actually address poverty in Bennington. We've done our part for 30 years, and it's time that the select board did something.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Okay, I think that's our end of our citizens' comment period. The next item on the agenda is the Downtown Bennington Alliance marketing proposal. Joel Lenzner, I think, is going to present it. Yeah. If anyone wants to leave before Mr. Lenzner, feel free to. I just want to have it interfered with.
I was just going to say, do you want to give the room and make it clear?
Yeah. Joel, you better speak quickly.
No, the folks are leaving.
Thank you. Is this different from this?
It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it the same?
Updated.
Thanks.
Updated statistics.
think you missed me, Joel. Thank you, sir.
Okay, it's okay, I can follow with this. Yeah, we got one of those before. Joel, you're on.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for putting me on the agenda.
Sure, thanks for coming back.
My name is Joel Lenzner. Earlier in the meeting today, we heard some folks talking about one of our assets in town, which is water. Another one of our important assets is downtown, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today.
Could you clear the room, Tom?
If anyone is not here for the purpose of hearing this discussion, please leave. It's hard enough for the presenter, and it's not fair to Joel. So, folks, at the end of the back of the room, either sit down quietly or leave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
So, wanted to talk to you about one of our assets, which is downtown, and what the Downtown Bennington Alliance has been doing to promote downtown. One of our biggest initiatives has been social media, and I'm hoping many of you have seen our new series called Bennington at Noon. It's a series of spots that are filmed at noon at various local mom and pop businesses around town. We're really a family mom and pop business, locally owned. We're not about promoting franchises per se, but really about what makes Main Street and downtown unique as a Vermont entity. So the series is filmed, I think you'll see the statistics here. We've done 32 spots now in various businesses around town. We've received 146,000 impressions and 3,700 reactions, comments, and shares, which translates into likes and that sort of thing on Facebook. And the videos have been watched over 38,000 minutes now. These metrics have exceeded our expectations for this series, and all of the people that we've done spots for so far have been really happy with how we've highlighted their businesses. What we're doing is really, it's a snapshot of each local business so that people can get more familiar with what's in our town. And we've had many people tell us, and you can even see the comments on social media, thanking us for Sue Prue, for example. This was the most recent one. Thanked us because she discovered Joe's Furniture from the most recent spot that we did, and she went and bought a bed there. We get comments like these on an ongoing basis that merchants share with us. A lot of the more savvy merchants will use these spots on their own social media pages to highlight their businesses, which creates a much bigger kind of mushroom in terms of what our ability to reach people is. So part of the funds that we're requesting tonight, which totals $750, is for social media boosting. So none of the money goes to writing or producing anything. 100% of the funds go directly to social media to pay for the boosts. What the boosts do is they put the movies or the posts in front of more eyes. So if we're going to get, and I'm just using these numbers as an example, if we were to get a post and organically, without putting any money into it, it were to get 150 views, boosting it would exponentially raise it to well over 1,000. That's what boosting does. So that's about half of what we need this money to do, is continue to boost the Bennington at Noon series. And we have another series starting on the first day of spring in March that I can't tell you the name yet because we'll be rolling it out in March, but it will be highlighting businesses in a different way rather than a spotlight at showing people a biographical view of the business, there's another angle that we'll be doing. So that will be our third series on social media, and I think we have a good track record of success, and I think the metrics show that. So let me move quickly into the holiday raffle promotion, which I'm really hoping everybody's heard of. So I'll explain it to the public. We did a raffle last year. The grand prize was 2 tickets to see Fish at Madison Square Garden on New Year's Eve, and hotel stay at the Renaissance in New York City. This year we kind of upped things, and it's a 12-night cruise on the Queen Mary 2 out of New York to the Caribbean for 2 people. It covers cruise fare, taxes, port fees. It's a balcony cabin. It's really wonderful, wonderful trip. It's valued at over $5,000. How you get a raffle ticket is if you spend $10 at any of the participating stores, get a raffle ticket. You spend $50, you get 5 raffle tickets, and so forth. This has been an exceptionally strong tool for us, both last year, but especially this year, because we're getting even more feedback from the shop owners who are saying that people are coming in and the shop owners are doing, sorry to release trade secrets, but upselling. You come in, somebody spends $30 at a local store, and there's something else that they might want. Well, for an extra ticket, you get that, and it's a way that retailers use to upsell the total purchase. It's an important tool for merchants. It's also more than that, it's getting people in their doors to begin with. People are interested in this prize. They see it advertised. It was on WTEN ABC News again this year, which we were thrilled for the outstanding coverage they gave us. They went and they did live coverage at 4 different downtown stores. I don't remember the date. It was 2 weeks ago or so. It would cost thousands and thousands of dollars to buy that kind of free advertising that we got from them. As a result, we had store owners telling us that they had an enormous influx of people from the capital region on Black Friday and Small Business Saturday. It's still, although in the next week or so, the tickets will be out and there won't be any left. It's been so popular. We still have a week to promote this and target boost to the Berkshires and Albany and locally. So that money is, we're looking for part of the $750 to go towards the continued boosts and also a contribution towards the prize. We have local businesses who have been sponsors and underwriters, and in essence, we're really looking for the town to join in and partner with us as an underwriter in that aspect of it.
Okay. Questions from the select board? Jean, you have any?
So the businesses that are participating in this, are they all of the ones that have participated in the spots?
Let me take a quick look. Yes, there might be. I don't know if Wasix has tickets.
That's okay, I was just getting a sense.
But for the vast amount, yes, and then there's also others that we haven't filmed spots for yet that have tickets.
That's all I came up with off the top of my head. I might ask to speak again, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
It's hard being the first person because you think of things later on.
No questions.
Joel, can you tell me more about what these boosts are, how they work? Do they sort of like push you to the top of the search engine window? Kind of, yeah?
Well, the boosts on Facebook, it push you to the top of people's feeds. So when you click on and get on your Facebook feed, you're going to see our story, whether it's advertising the cruise or a spot on the At Noon series, doing the boost gets that into people's feeds. What we can kind of micromanage it is we can say, okay, with this particular post, we want to target the Capital District. We want to target the Berkshires. We want to target certain age ranges even. So it kind of depends what we're doing and where we target. But
Well, I just want to say that I've spoken with several of the business owners downtown, and they're all very enthusiastic about what you've done. And I've looked at some of the recordings that Joe has done. They're well done, enthusiastic. And we got an email today. I don't know whether I can disclose who it came from.
I'd just say
It's okay.
a citizen, just say a citizen.
Okay, a citizen,
Yeah.
a business owner, who said that she has saw a demonstrable increase in business because of this promotion.
that's really nice.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Joel, you and I disagree a little bit about what the town should pay for in terms of advertising and whatnot, but I will say these videos are a lot of fun to watch, and I really did enjoy getting in and seeing the fry later at the fish store and seeing the undercoating at the undercoating store or whatever it was. So
They're different.
They're fun. They're little peeking under the hood, as it were, in Bennington, and I do appreciate that. And so I just want you to know that, but I don't have any questions at this point.
Hi, I also like the videos. They're fun to watch. So can you talk to me about, my understanding is you're a membership organization, yes?
Yes.
So is your membership, are the people in the video, the stores in the video, are those is that your membership?
No, our membership has 60-something business members. We just haven't shot, we're at a pace of like 2 or 3, sometimes 4
Okay.
videos a week, and we'll eventually get to all of them.
Okay.
This is just the ones that we've shot so far.
Great, okay, and then do you have a cost to become a member?
It's $1,
Okay,
although many businesses have been very generous and donated other amounts.
okay. And then what are the benefits of membership?
That we're going to, the marketing of downtown, well, I'd say it's 2 parts. There's the collective marketing as downtown as a whole that you're buying into, that this is an important concept, but also individual series like this, the film series that you're going to have your business highlighted, and that's a tool that you can use on your own site. Send it out in links on your own email to your own customer list. So it gives you, I guess, the opportunity just to buy into collective marketing.
So it's a membership organization in which part of the benefits is that you get a video.
Well, I wouldn't say part of it's what our initiatives are right now. We've done, this is our 2nd series, we're planning a 3rd in the spring. That's one tool that we use. We really focus on social media and this holiday promotion. I think you could look at, and I don't want to speak for the BBC or the Chamber, but the BBC has very successful events that they do. Mayfest, Midnight Madness, a number of other. These are different than the social media twist that I think we're looking at marketing. They all fit together really well, and they're all important components.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. I too have enjoyed the videos. I've learned from watching them on Facebook, and I was pleasantly surprised eating breakfast a couple weeks ago. And it's in the background doing my schoolwork, and I hear at several locations in Bennington as I'm listening. So that was great to see that on Channel 10. So I've enjoyed this, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel, and it's very interesting and positive for our community. I'm just wondering the why. Why can't the organization support $750 through its membership rather than coming to the town for $750?
Well,
I hope that's a decent question for you to respond to.
We came to this board for $4,500 in the spring, I think, and the vote was tied 3-3. That was for social media posts, an event that we had to cancel during the summer, largely because we didn't have the funding to be able to do it. And we felt that the social media piece was important to keep going on our own budget. And now we have this, this holiday promotion again. We've been very fortunate to have people donate from anywhere from $1 a day to $10 or $20 for the year. And all of these things help, but it's not free to market a town of our size and to preserve the type of asset that we have, like our Main Street. It can't just be done on the backs of store owners who have been struggling, whether it's because of the bypass or Walmart or whatever excuse you want to say it might have been. We're in a position where we felt we needed to help ourselves, and we're asking the town to contribute.
I guess if I have a concern, it's that I'd like to see a comprehensive marketing plan for the whole town. All the businesses run by, sponsored by the town. Because what I hear, this is sort of like a one-off tonight, and we're not really dealing with basically marketing our entire community. This is really directed by you and your organization, where it really is a town responsibility across the spectrum. And I see this as a critical and important component of a comprehensive plan, because marketing has been significantly limited either by resources or lack of attention, which you have taken on your own. But I do feel that we really should be talking about a comprehensive plan that talks not about $750, but a significant investment in the marketing part of our community.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think this is something that we could put a number of players together to accomplish, but it's not something that's going to have an end game in the next 6 months. So this, I don't call it a one-off, because we have a history of running successful social media for 2 years now. This is our second holiday promotion. This one has already proven to be very successful. It's what is necessary right now. If we keep kicking the ball down the road with waiting for us to come up with a big umbrella policy and initiative, we're going to lose a lot of things along the way. Would I love to see that? Would I love to be a part of it? Yes. Let's get started now. Let's get people from the BBC, the Chamber, the DBA, and the town together and start talking about this.
Okay. Because I do think that should be part of the 2019 budget discussion, a comprehensive marketing plan that includes all of these aspects, particularly the ones that you have demonstrated have real value, at least to those businesses that have gotten the benefit of it.
This gets us to that point. This gets us so that we can all get on the same page. But it's fulfilling a need that downtown needs right now.
Tom, if I may?
Please.
So this is a little bit of a inter-board conversation here, but I think one of the problems that I have with this kind of request is the small requests coming into this board and us not knowing when they're coming in. It feels to me like we should be working towards a policy or some sort of situation in which our community development director or one of our town staff people fields these small requests that come in, whether it's for Sophomore Summit or for the Arts Council or this, and that they are then either recommended to the board or not recommended to the board. And that there's a budget for that, and that there's a process for that, and that part of that process is following some sort of a larger plan that would be developed by a group of people, qualified individuals. So nothing to do with this request tonight, except that just in general, I feel like we should be bundling requests, and they should come to the select board in a different manner, because it's not budgeted for. You know, we don't have this in our budget at this point. I would say just before I let up, Joel, you and I talked a lot about this in the spring, and Joey, We talked a lot about it, and I think we're on a different page, but we can respectfully, disagree a little bit. This feels a little too close to advertising to me, and I just don't think the taxpayer really should be bound to pay for advertising. So that's the way I feel about it. If it gets closer to townwide marketing and is part of a larger proposal, I feel like I could support it, but I'm not sure I would support it in this form.
So how exactly are you defining advertising? Because when the BBC sponsors Midnight Madness, which is a very successful and well-loved event, that is advertising for small businesses downtown. Come out and shop in our businesses during these times. We're going to have sales for you. Why the double standard?
So I don't feel it's a double standard. I like these videos very much, and I feel like they are essentially little advertising pieces for these businesses, and that's great, in the way that the Penny Saver was. But when Blue Ben does a placemat, and they put the businesses on it, they don't come to the town and ask for money. They ask the businesses for money to be on the placemat. So it feels to me like this, as structured, this is not an appropriate request of the taxpayer money. That's my opinion at this point.
So when the DBA came to the select board in April, we were asking for a shot at $4,500 of DID funding. There were two organizations offered who were on the agenda that night to make presentations. The BBC made theirs first. You voted to give all of the money to the BBC before we made our presentation. So we're not coming on some one-off deal. We're coming because for whatever procedural reason that you chose to do that, for two organizations asking for DID funds, you voted before we gave our presentation. So we've now adjusted the amount that we're asking for in hopes that those procedural irregularities didn't come up again.
Being mindful of the time, can we vote on this and then see where we land as a select board?
I think you have to have a motion.
I'll motion, or go ahead, Carson.
Make it, I'll second it.
All right, so I'll motion that we approve the funding request of $750 for the DBA.
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
Yes. Or did you want to start down there?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, what you're doing. I personally am not on Facebook, but I know most people probably are. I haven't seen any of the videos, but I trust they're fabulous. For me, it's every good idea can't generate us, it can't force us to, or have a person sitting at that table asking us for money. And I worry that the floodgates could open, that everyone who has a great idea is going to come and expect the town to fund their great idea. There's lots of great ideas out there that, we don't hear about, and they happen, I don't know how they happen, but people have figured out a way to accomplish their goals. So for me, I'm tentative for many reasons, and that's just one of them. I applaud your creativity and your tenacity. I really, really do. I just don't feel like this is an appropriate request.
Anything you'd like to?
No, I appreciate you guys filling, what's maybe perceived as a void. You're picking up a lot of businesses. I always, same as I said last year, I wish you were able to work more closely with some of the organizations that are in existence. I think, all boats are going to rise even higher. This is a great round two, the cruise piece, and I don't think you're asking for very much money. I think we as a select board need to be a little more mindful of where we're allocating funds during budget season, and if an organization is being given money to help promote the downtown and they're not getting the job done, then organizations like yours are going to step in and help out. So I don't think you're asking for very much, and thank you for bringing it down from last year.
Yeah, I've got a few things to say. To Jeannie's point about funding great ideas, and Donald's as well, I think that's part of the role of what we do as a select board and as a town. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to get a yes to it, but I think we need to encourage people like Joel and other organizations to come to us. What do you got to lose? Secondly, right now we don't have a marketing plan, and I want as many oars pulling in the same direction as possible for the businesses in the downtown. Having been a small business owner in Bennington, I can tell you firsthand how important it is that we have as many oars pulling in the same direction. And this, I think, is a very small amount of money from a group that has clearly demonstrated positive results, not only for the town, but for local businesses.
Okay.
So I think I'm with you on the idea of a process. I don't know that process resides with the town or if it resides with the select board, but I do think there needs to be a process for great ideas. And I guess, Joel, you gave me pause when first we discussed that the membership for your organization is $1 a person, but you also said there were some businesses that were very generous and paid $1 a day, some paid 20, which made me start thinking, well, then you probably have taken in more money than the amount of money that you're requesting here, I assume. But I don't actually know what the finances are. And it feels to me like that if we are giving away taxpayer money for a good idea, even if it's a great idea, I want to make sure that I know what the organization is. I don't know what your status is as an organization. I know on your website, the address that's listed is Fiddleheads. So if someone came in to find the Downtown Bennington Alliance, they would find Fiddleheads, not an organization. So I feel like there needs to be, it feels muddy. I don't know who the organization I'm giving to. I don't know what your finances are and what your needs are. And I don't know what the track record is. I mean, I'm getting numbers of how many people viewed and how many boosts, but I don't know what that means in terms of a result. So all I'm saying is that it feels like if we want to fund great ideas, we need to have a very clear process for doing so.
So perhaps you weren't aware because you had recused yourself in April, and
I was sitting right there. I was sitting right out in the
Okay, well, I outlined our nonprofit status, our board members, and our budget. I guess I would like to know why, when 2 weeks ago this was on the agenda, you recused yourself, and you haven't this time.
I did not recuse myself.
You said you were recusing yourself 2 weeks ago.
No, she wasn't. It wasn't on the agenda. You came off the agenda because of lack of, there were two people that weren't here that you wanted to have here.
I did not recuse myself.
Donald wasn't here and Jim wasn't here. Anyway.
So, I mean, I do think that there should be a process. And I feel like it needs to be sophomore summit. If we ask for the high school's finances, we can see where the $500 fits in there. So we just need to have a process.
Well, we need to be able to justify it. So expenditure of taxpayer money needs to benefit the whole community, not just individual businesses. Individual businesses is advertising. The whole community is community-wide marketing.
Yes.
Okay. Other comments? I think I feel that this should be part of a comprehensive plan. Oh, I'm sorry, Chad, go ahead.
Sorry. I agree about the process, but that process doesn't exist yet, and I don't want to punish people for something that doesn't exist yet. Maybe we work this out, we find a way to get a process that does work. But I think the amount that's being requested, any way that we can generate foot traffic in our town, get people shopping, spending money, generating sales tax, I think is a good thing, and I'm excited to see what they can do with this money.
Okay. To that, I think unless we have a real plan, I don't see the benefit to our community in just giving $750 to some kind of a campaign that seems to be very interesting and attractive. But that's all the comment I have. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? No further discussion. Signify this is a motion to approve an expense of $750 to the Bennington Downtown Alliance. Those in favor, signify by aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Those that are opposed to the motion signify by your hands. That's 3, 4. So the motion fails. Thank you, Joel. We'd invite you to the meeting on the, when's the plan going to be presented, Stu?
I believe it's the 14th.
Yeah, to discuss that comprehensive plan and see how your organization might fit into that.
Will it be as predictable as tonight?
I hope it is consistent with the benefit of this community, not just for individual businesses, but for all businesses and the community taxpayers.
Do you know if when Ms. Jenkins discussing her recusal with you before the last meeting was caught on film? Even before, was the film running before it went live?
I have no idea, frankly, at this particular point in time. What happened the last meeting has no relevance to this motion and the decision tonight.
I believe
I
there's
have
a
a question,
conflict of
Tom.
interest.
Yeah.
Just perhaps, if in fact Joel is being invited back on the 14th, if he were to supply his organization information, his budget data and information, would that be helpful in the continuing discussion of an overall marketing plan, which may include?
I would think that would be elementary.
If it could fit into a larger marketing plan, yes.
Thank you.
I hope in the future you will start supporting downtown. You've disappointed not only myself, but I think this is an affront to our local business community.
Well, thank you for your comments and our
Highly
position.
politicized.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the opioid response plan discussion. This is sort of like the third, I think, round in this, isn't it? And so critical that we have this discussion. And Jennifer Fells is going to lead the discussion tonight. Thank you for coming and waiting for this discussion.
There are several of the leaders that are part of this plan.
Great. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe bring your chairs with you. This is what I was planning to do. Jennifer and team, thank you for your patience. We apologize for delay. We're past the time we had you on the agenda for, and but we're looking forward to the discussion.
It's all important.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Fells. I'm the director of the Bennington Blueprint, and I also work at SVMC. I'd like my team to introduce themselves, if they could.
I'm Kate Lamson. I work at the Public Defender's Office.
I'm Gary Day, Director at Acton Bennington. I'm Zerwat Chaudhry, I'm the Community Development Director for the town of Bennington.
Chad Schmidt, Bennington County Sheriff.
Christy Cross. I'll be the new Bennington Director of Blueprint.
I'm Tom D., CEO of Southwestern Vermont Healthcare.
Thank you all for coming.
All of the team has contributed to this plan that you have before you. It's a summary. The plan you have in front of you is a summary. There is a text that goes with this that can certainly be provided, and it has been shared with the select board. The opioid crisis. In April, Peter Welch held a forum in Bennington, very well attended. It was held at the Department of Health. They have a conference room. The room was full. There was a great facilitated conversation on how do we address this. There was wide, diverse representation. There was a commitment at that time for leaders to come together across different segments of dealing with the issue of opioid substance use disorder, a chronic disease, a commitment to come together and have a coordinated plan. We realized that people were working successful, however, we were rather siloed in our activity. So the leaders that came together, we have developed a mission statement, goals, identified what our work is, and also some strategies that we believe that were important. SPMC generously provided us with a facilitator, a neutral party that could work with us, have our voice come together. So there's no ask. This is informational. You've been hearing from other, you heard from Fed Up, which was very powerful. There are other strategies, certainly, that will become before this board, but we wanted to have a good understanding and ask questions about what are some of the strategies that are happening in communities across Vermont as well as nationwide. So a lot of these are things that you will see happening. And actually, Bennington is doing a very good job on these already. We just need to be more coordinated in our efforts. So you can see, if you start on the upper right, upper left, I'm sorry, our goals of this leadership team. It's also to reduce duplication and to be more coordinated in our response. You can see the list of our leadership team. We have a variety, and we have 4 components of the plan that we are addressing, and that is prevention, treatment, recovery, and criminal justice. So those are the 4 main prongs that you would use, and each one have strategies on how to address the crisis. Those are the major areas, and that's pretty consistent what you see in other communities. So there's representation of leaders that have been coming to meetings regularly on a monthly basis to develop this plan. We do have a mission statement that Bennington County will have a partnership using an integrated approach to improve the quality of life by reducing adverse effects of opioid use in our community. And we do have a vision that a united Bennington County working together in a compassionate, inclusive, and comprehensive manner in order to achieve a healthier community. So it's us working together as leaders across the community. We do have immediate priorities. It's to hire a health service area project coordinator. We're working with grant writers at SVMC, other opportunities that may come down from the federal government, state government. We are still communicating with Peter Welch's office. They will be coming down, meeting with the group, looking at the plan, seeing what opportunities we may have for funding a coordinator to sustain this. These are all very busy people behind me, so they probably have 2 jobs, not just one. So it's really to have somebody support us in our goals and to meet the priorities. Our medium term, and we're doing our budget process now, and our analysis is to have recovery housing. Somebody that's in recovery, if they go back to a setting that does not support their recovery, they will not be successful. There's a lot of sense, a lot of perceptions, misperceptions about opioid substance use disorder. It's a chronic disease. There are relapse rates. Studies have shown that the relapse rate with somebody that's in recovery is no different than somebody with diabetes, congestive heart failure, or respiratory diseases. So it falls into that chronic disease patterns. And also to build and enhance a community center that provides safe spaces for youth. Those are our 2 major priorities. The columns that show prevention, treatment, recovery, and criminal justice, you can see all the activity that's currently happening in Bennington. And pending, we have in prevention is a syringe services program. More will be coming on that. A lot of work is being done on that and our due diligence to have that program in Bennington. Safe spaces, as I mentioned, is one of our priorities. And also we're looking how, as a medical community and dealing with population health, when a person hits the medical system with a Blueprint for Health, we will be screening individuals in the primary care practice, pediatrics, across all ages. We'll be screening people for substance use disorder, whether that be alcohol, opioids, also tobacco. In the treatment realm, we're looking at having a Bennington hub in 2019 that's working with the Hawthorne Recovery Center as that changes. We do not have methadone services in Bennington. That would be probably, that would not happen until 2020. So a lot more work has to be done there. And also we're working on timely, in the pending area, is timely transition to treatment. Somebody goes to the emergency department with a heart attack or a stroke or diabetes, they are immediately put into a treatment path, and that's where the patient is entered into treatment. For opioids, it can take several weeks. We've got that down to, we're working on having that into the next day, same day, at the longest onset, 48 hours. So that's a collaborative working with the Turning Point Center, the hospital emergency department, and a new practice in town, Savita Health, where they will take persons as walk-ins and the next day. So that's a big advancement for people with a disease getting timely access to treatment. And recovery housing, and also you can see the current programs that are engaged in criminal justice. The reverse is just some data. We would be developing a dashboard of some measures. The measure on the upper left, the number of Medicaid beneficiaries in a SPOKE program, that's a treatment using buprenorphine. It's called medication-assisted treatment. That's done in a primary care practice or a specialty practice. There is no right number for this. It's what the demand is. So it's not saying we should be higher or we should be lower. We want to meet the demand of whatever is out there in the community. The graphic on the upper right shows the morphine milliequivalents. This is looking at how much morphine is prescribed, and there's new prescribing laws that went into effect last July of 2017, and the prescribing of opioids has gone down significantly, and that's across the state. There's graphics on opioid-related fatalities for Bennington and also the current rate of overdoses for 2018. So if my colleagues want to talk about the plan or why we are here, the commitment of the group, I would ask them to speak to that.
Okay. Just maybe before you do that, just a couple of preliminary questions. You mentioned a new health organization for referral, as a referral source.
Yes.
Who's that, or where is that?
It's located on Dewey Street. That's a temporary location. They're moving at the first of the year to Main Street in the same building whereas Mount Anthony Primary Care is located. It has 2, possibly moving to 3 prescribers. They're supported by the Blueprint for Health with a case manager and behavioral health services. It's called Savita Health.
Is that a proprietary or not?
Yes. Yes. They've been at Bennington since October, and they also have opened a practice in Springfield, Vermont.
Okay. It does sound like the Blueprint for Health just sort of runs through this whole discussion. And if it weren't opioids, you'd be dealing with some other part of the health care, the health scenario. Is the purpose of this whole exercise to bring a combined effort into the response for this epidemic?
And realizing it's not just treatment, we want to prevent this in our youth. And to have systems in place, that we have capacity of the treatment. We have safe places for people to recovery housing. And our criminal justice system that is very responsive and supportive of, the best practices, what's the evidence that works. So we've had wonderful participation by all those sectors. It's certainly not the blueprint alone that does this. It is really all of the partners coming to the table, and working together. We have agreed, and the commitment, it's in our values, that it's nonpartisan for our particular organization. We'll make decisions based on the priority, what the need is, and we will all support that. So.
And the resources, it just sounds like you go through this whole process, prevention, treatment, and recovery gets to a point, but then you sort of hit this wall of lack of housing.
Yeah.
That must be a critical challenge that has to be met.
Who's leading the charge for that? He couldn't be here because he's up advocating for funding for recovery housing. It's Ken Sixberry. I won't speak for him, but there is a budget in process that he has. We'll be reviewing it at our meeting on Friday. I believe it's the 14th. We'll be looking at his budget. It's a phase-in, starting with some local housing, start small. It'll meet the standards for recovery housing. It's not somebody who just puts up a building and, it's a coordinated effort that the housing includes voc rehab, Department of Children and Family Services, all the it's a wraparound services in recovery housing to support people in their recovery and come back to, productive lives, they're taxpayers.
Right. Other folks, go ahead, feel free, then we'll ask.
There's so many things about this issue that are so difficult to follow. One of the things you mentioned was methadone services in 2020, maybe. It seems like we're kind of at a crisis point right now, and that's a long time to wait. What are the barriers to that?
The barriers to that, people, my team should speak up also if they have more. It's the federal rules to set up a methadone clinic. They are probably the worst I've ever seen. I mean,
How ironic.
It's a huge undertaking to open up a methadone services. Currently, people with substance use disorder from Bennington have to travel to Rutland or to Brattleboro, and North Adams is the closest. That's a recent that funding through Vermont Medicaid can go to Massachusetts to support people. So we know that we are missing a population that needs that treatment. You can't hold a job and go to Brattleboro every day, the hour ride each way, weather permitting, or to Rutland. So we do need those services here.
So I was quite taken by, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Just add to that, Don. I think also one of our challenges has been to show a demand analysis that there's enough critical mass to support this service. Ironically, we intuitively feel very strong that there is, but we have to be able to demonstrate that to the federal government. Having some of these outside agencies, the Acadia is one of them. I mean, they're for-profit. They have several sites in the state of Vermont. They've been well received in the state. And they also have a model that is able to, show the market demand analysis for these type of services. So we think having them come into this area is a positive thing. And again, we're trying to see how we can partner with them to get this off the ground as soon as possible. But it would take at least a year to go through, the approval process.
But this group and lots of other good people are working on that, and it's in the works to the extent that it can be.
Yeah, I think it's, I think there's a momentum building to have this take place.
Yeah. Tom, while you have the mic, I mentioned this at one of our last meetings, but I was quite taken by Chief Del Pozo's letter from Burlington that came out. It was an open letter about this, and kind of gave a punch list of what he felt communities should do. And I've been asking different members, Forrest Waden from Emergency Services and Chief Doucette and a few other people, kind of what they thought. But there are a couple of hospital items on here. One would be giving out buprenorphine at the emergency room to anyone who presents with an addiction and requests it. And I mentioned that at the last meeting, and I'm not sure if that's something our hospital would ever get to. Is that something we're heading towards?
Yeah, actually, we're becoming one of the leaders in the state in terms of developing protocols for that.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, and then the other one, that relates directly to the hospital that he suggested was to train primary care doctors to treat addiction and prescribe addiction medications. And I imagine
I think the primary care doctors, if we can create additional support systems in the area, such as these hubs that have a higher end service availability, I think you'd see more primary care doctors being willing to participate.
I see.
Right now, they're fearful of having their practice being swallowed up by these patients. They need to have a referral source.
And that's why it's such a constriction now.
That's what we're trying to create.
I see. Great. Well, I'm glad you're on that. Yeah. I have a feeling that if we went down this list, you all would do pretty well on it.
Well, I think this is,
Jennifer.
and Jennifer has been helping this whole process. This can only happen by all our folks working together. This cannot, there's not one organization that has the resources or the expertise to pull this off. I think best practice is really a multi-effort from many different agencies with different expertise. And I think that's what you're seeing. I mean, we're getting together on a regular basis to see how we can pull this together.
I'm really glad to see Zerwatt as part of your group, and thank you, Zerwatt, for taking the time to be part of that. But I guess if it would help to have more town input, I would certainly offer my services to join your group or in some way feed into the system if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be terrific. Again, there's no ask tonight. This is just trying to keep you updated.
Offering. It doesn't cost anything.
But certainly having the town's involvement is critical as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Others?
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and having us come before the select board. We appreciate that. And we can't do it with all the people that are sitting behind me. They're really been really phenomenal group to work with.
And there's many others, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, this is, really appreciate you coming out tonight. But, when we have these visits for a lot of different things, we always talk about benchmarking, and at some given point in time, how do you benchmark? And I think you've already answered it with that strip that goes along the back page. The result is, cutting down the number of deaths, the number of incidents, the number of responses that have to be made. And I guess that's how, over the years, you can see how successful this whole effort is. And I think what we're saying as a select board, what can we do to lighten the load and to help, carry this very onerous task that we have.
Can I ask about safe spaces for youth recreation? Did you have, were there particular things that you were thinking about enlisting this as pending?
There's several things that are happening. One is Rise Vermont, which is having a physical activity, safe activities for families. There's the splash pad, for example, that's being put in downtown. Zerwatt is working on a collaboration with UCS and having child services at the recreation center and improvements in the recreation center, looking at budgets, what does that look like? So we're early in the infancy in that, and to not just be in Bennington, but to spread that to other communities as we learn from the work that we're doing. That's really an evidence basis, have a safe play spaces for youth.
Thank you.
Tom?
Sorry.
I'm really glad we're talking about this, because if you don't talk about it, things aren't going to change. So I'm really, really hopeful that for the sheer reason we're talking about it, and I know several of you, and this list is very long of people who I'm sure are incredibly capable and compassionate. So this gives me a tremendous amount of hope to see all of this. I'm curious on your priorities, the immediate and medium-term priorities. What's the timeline for those?
Immediate were, I would say within a 6-month. And the medium terms, looking at, I know Ken Sigsbury with the recovery housing has plans to do a very soft phase in April, March, and the planning is still happening on the community center. So probably we're looking at A total timeline, I would say 3 years, would be aggressive.
You said 2 years?
3.
3.
Yeah.
So you're already planning the community center then? These medium-term things are already underway a little bit?
The planning is, the design, we're looking at budgets. Ken is more solid at this point, I feel, with, starting with some capacity of perhaps a 10-bed, 10 housing unit that he could start and develop the wraparound services.
The one thing I noticed, there's no long-term goals. But are we hoping we don't need any long-term goals? We've got it in place and we have a plan and it's working?
I would say this is a work in progress, so these plans are still being refined. We're going to be looking at them on Friday. This is kind of a response, by the way, to the congressman's request to come back to me and tell us what your vision is, what some of your needs are, because he was looking to put together some type of funding proposals that we could talk to him about. So I think, again, Gene, this is a continued, very much work in progress.
It's evolving.
There's a whole lot of subsets here. The whole methadone system, you don't really see it, medium term, but I would say that's another medium term, another, 12 to 24 months out there. So there's, you'll see more as we populate this plan.
I think 3 years is pretty aggressive, so that's really great. Yeah.
Also, you can't go to a funder or write a grant unless you show that you have community-wide support, you're addressing all four all four components of a plan, and you have a solid plan, and you have community support. That's one of the first things a funder will ask for, is what's your plan?
Do you have a plan to, sorry, Jean.
I'm done, thank
Do you have a plan to do the hiring of Bennington Health Service Area Project person?
Yes, we're working with the grant writer. We're actually meeting next week. There are some funds out there, and we'll be talking to some state organizations that can fund this.
Great. Let us know if you need some letters of support.
If I need a letter of support, Christy will be calling you.
Yeah. No, that would be great to have a person who can help pull some of these threads together, I think, for you. Yeah.
Can you explain, so Christy, what your role will be and what the health services project manager position, how do those work together?
I'm retiring as a director of the Blueprint, and Christy will be moving into that role. And I've been helping.
But how does that connect to the health services project manager?
That will be somebody that we will hire to do just the work of this plan and keep the work alive of this.
And then Christy, what will you do? I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. So
Well, eventually be the project leader, so I would oversee that individual.
Just explain for a second, some of us are fortunate to know the difference here, but Jennifer and Christy will be the new Jennifer, but just describe the difference between the Blueprint and what we're going through here. So they're two completely separate organizations funded by different entities. And
separate people.
Right.
Okay, yeah, got it.
I just wanted to take the time, we're fortunate enough to have things like this printed for us, and they are in the packets, but for those at home, the group that's been put together from a leadership standpoint, Tom mentioned only maybe half the folks are here. If you do have the time, I welcome everyone to understand who's on this project and getting behind this. We have some of the most influential people in our community. They're experts in their fields, tackling one of the largest issues in the United States today. So we're ahead of the curve, and I know we're only getting snippets of it, but please take the time. It's very much highlighted. It's a working draft, and it's only to get better. There's a budget to follow. Thanks for taking the time to do this. It's important.
The web-based, information system, is that going to be up and running? So like the Carson's
That's an effort by United Counseling Service. They are working on having so that there would be a central access if people want information about this service, that it would be publicly available. If I want to access services, it would provide that information. People may be reluctant to make that first step, because there's a lot of stigma.
Folks from Kate from the Defender's Office and Chad from the Sheriff's Department. how does law enforcement fit into, how do you see that the evolution of this plan impacts your positions and your responsibilities?
Well, we're still going to continue all of what you would consider normal law enforcement activities as far as the reducing demand and the supply side war on drugs that's been going on forever. Those are still, normal things that we're going to be carrying on through the course of business. But in addition, all law enforcement in the county that I'm aware of are carrying Narcan to revive folks who overdose on opioids. So that's a good first step. Then we've partnered with Ken Sigsbury and his organization to try to bring people forward who will coach them into convincing them to go to treatment. Right now, we don't have any real authority to make somebody go to the hospital or to seek treatment. We're also working with Senator Sears and the other legislative delegation in the county to try to come up with some legislation to maybe change that. So this group is just a great way for all of us to get our heads together, break down the silos that we've been operating in, and just try to come up with some real solutions. So this really isn't what you would consider as normal law enforcement activity, but I think those are the out-of-the-box types of steps that we need to be taking, and that's why we're here to support that. I keep in very close contact with Chief Doucette. He's been made part of this plan, and he is very much in support of it as well. So, law enforcement is represented in this effort. So.
Great, thanks, Chief. Yep. Thanks, Sheriff. Kate, from the defense side of things, how do you think this will impact the defense side of dealing with these issues?
Well, one of the major ways that I think is the recovery housing piece of it. We see people in our community struggling with this disease and then falling into criminal behavior and ending up in the criminal justice system. And it's hard for both sides, to look at that with a different mindset, that this isn't, these are burglaries, yes, but why? What's the reason behind the behavior? So recovery housing is important, I think, in that context, because instead of having to leave the community as you get better, you get to stay here. So it's a real investment, I think, and saying these are community members and you may have done bad things while you were in the throes of this addiction, but we believe in you and we're going to try to help you. But most importantly, perhaps from my office's perspective, is the clients that we represent, the parents in particular, who are involved in the child protective system. So right now, for a mother, say, who has an infant who's born scoring on the addiction scale and has to get treatment at the hospital because of that, if she wanted to go into a recovery type housing with the baby, the only availability in Vermont for that for somebody from Bennington right now is the Lund Center, and that's all the way in Burlington. Wow. So if you have a father, for example, who wants to remain involved and be part of this family that's getting all of these services that are clearly necessary, to uproot them and have them to have to be that far away is just an incredible hardship. So having the ability to keep those people here, where they have their community supports, where they have grandparents and they have people that they went to school with, and can have sort of the community rally around them while they're going through that really delicate process of that early stages of recovery, would just be enormous. And I think that we would see a lot more successful outcomes for people that are involved with DCF. And that in turn, in all honesty, I think also affects keeping crime rates down, because a lot of these are just born out of desperation. And I think if we can really get behind them, that we'll see all of that lowered.
Since you're sitting there, not to raise another discussion item, but, a drug court, I don't see that as anywhere in this plan. Is that because it's not being considered or is relevant to this discussion?
No, I think that it has been considered. The referring agency to a drug court would be the state's attorney's office. And so far in our discussions, that hasn't been something that the state's attorney's office is interested in. And that's for a lot of reasons. And I know Erica would say this more articulately than I do. And I'm not saying that I don't support a drug court. I, in all frankness, think that we should keep an open mind about all of the different options. When we have a crisis of this magnitude, I don't think that we should, shut doors. But there's a lot of organizations, and some of them you see on this list, like CRJ, that are doing some of the things that a traditional drug court model might also do. So I think it's just a question of this group trying to come up with, well, what's best for Bennington? You know, we're small, we've got strengths, we've got weaknesses, so what makes the most sense for that? So drug court hasn't been something that has been discussed as long as I've been a part of the leadership group as something that's viable right now. But again, if the state's attorney's office isn't going to refer people to a drug court, then it wouldn't work. So we're working with what we have, so to speak.
Okay. Other folks? Right. Thanks a lot.
Can I just add a few things?
Please, yep.
I think I just want
Thanks,
to
Zero.
echo a few things that Kate just said, and I think Tom mentioned a little bit earlier. I think, you know, what I've learned so much from being involved with this group is that all the various projects that the town is doing, whether it is with the improvements to the Bennington Recreation Center, whether it's with the various park projects, this is our opportunity to change the tenor of the conversations we've had about these resources. It's not just about keeping the junkies out, the addicts out. It's about recognizing that substance use disorder is something that is amongst all of us. And the best thing we can do as a community is to stand up and support people who are struggling with this disease. So I think our tendency has been to jump to an indictment of criminality, and I think even with Chad standing here behind me, I think it's important for us to understand that we really have to approach this really differently. So I implore you to do that.
May I ask Zero a question while she's there? I know you want to move on, but so Zero, one question for you, because we've just had a conversation about this, about all the different agencies in Bennington that Nancy talked about that perhaps overlap in some of their work, and all do very important work, but there is overlap. And so I was struck by the long-term goal under the goal statement of creating another 501c3 organization. And do you think that would have a new and different place from the other ones? Do you think that would be an important new entity for the community?
I think Tom and Jennifer might be better positioned to respond to this, but my understanding is that just even from, you know, the advantage of all of us coming together under one roof has been that we can walk away better supporting prevention, treatment, and recovery rather than getting in its way. So I think the education component for each of us, the understanding how the resources we have can support this is significant. But simultaneously, there's a lot of specialized knowledge and navigation of resources that I don't think any of us are in a position to undertake. And I think that's where this is not just yet another agency. We have a very specific crisis in our hands in some ways. And I think that's perhaps where this attempt to create something separate is. But again, I appreciate that even this separate organization is still very much with an eye towards that kind of coordination. That's the best I can answer, and I'll defer to Tom.
And I'd also say to that, Dawn, you know, whether or not we have a 501c3 formed, it's the need to create a very organized initiative here. We were actually kind of taking a page out of the Putnam Block project initially, of getting all these diverse groups together, and how do we create formality, how do we organize it, we need leadership. So ultimately, maybe it's not a 501c3, but there is a need to have a very organized effort versus haphazard versus, you know, all of us trying to work on our own. Okay. And I think that's kind of the spirit behind that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the fine folks? Jennifer, thank you for coordinating this, and this is not the end of the discussion. It's really just the start. Is there something else, Tom, you want to offer?
I just want to say that Jennifer does deserve a shout out for the effort she's been putting together here. It's been quite remarkable, and her loss will be felt, but I'm sure we're going to be still reaching out to Jennifer in the future too. So,
don't go far.
But she's done a yeoman's job on this, really has.
Yeah, it really is. You can just tell, and wish you well in the future endeavors and adventures, and we expect to probably see you in some capacity sitting there again. Thank you for all, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, I think the next item is lead reduction grant. Stuart, this won't take too long, will it?
No. Oh, the BDA's canceled, that's right.
May I make a comment on all of this? Just a brief
I'm sorry, go ahead.
brief comment on
The opiates issue that we just talked about? Sure, go ahead. You probably better, Jerry, just go ahead and just introduce yourself and while they're setting up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
No, that's fine.
My name is Jerry Bird. I'm from Bennington, and one of the things that what this brought out is incredibly important, and I'd really love to see our town throw our full support behind something like this. To have people underneath the bridges living, and to have excrement and everything being spread over GBICs is to me unconscionable. Our town is wonderful. I just came back from a trip to Wales and visiting my brother. They have a laundry system and a town outhouse that is well maintained. I mean, it's state of the art. And I know that we could do something similar, and I know that the rec system has those kinds of things, and they offer it, but they're kind of sequestered.
I think
so all I'm saying is that I completely support what these people are trying to bring aboard, and I'd love our town to take an unbelievable trajectory towards developing and caring for each individual in a way that makes humanity worthwhile.
That's a great
And so
statement.
thank you all. I appreciate all the work that you all do. I can't tell you how much that is true, so thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. We really appreciate that. And it's like we can all do better. I think that's sort of what we're here for. Thank you very much, Jerry. Jason, you're going to lead us in this discussion?
Yes. My name's Jason Dolmich. I'm with MSK Engineering. To my right here is Tim Raymond, who's the Chief of Operations of the...
Chief of Operations, Engineering, and Capacity Development Program for the Public Drinking Water Program.
Whoa.
I got close.
Does that fit on your card?
Does that go in the front and the back?
It's a 5x7 card. We also have Ellen Pardoring and Megan Young from the state of Vermont as well.
Great. Thank you for coming down.
Yeah. And then obviously the great Larry Gates and Tony.
Yeah, where's Larry?
And RJ are all here. Have all participated. And then Liam McCrae from my office here as well, who had the difficult job of trying to get all this information that we've collected and gathered together in some readable and as accurate as possible. So I'm going to speak briefly while these guys get started. I'm going to just talk about, tell you guys what we're going to be talking about. I'll hand it to Tim for a brief preamble, and then we can embark on the presentation of the information. So tonight is a public hearing which is to present the information and findings for a lead grant, service line grant that the town of Bennington received from the state of Vermont, which covered mapping of lead service lines in the town, as well as developing funding strategies and a replacement program. So as well as additional public outreach. So we'll talk about all of those in brief. But before I start, I'm going to give Tim a brief moment to make a preamble while we get our technology underway.
Yes, so again, Tim Raymond with the State of Vermont Drinking Water Groundwater Protection Division. I'm familiar with the town of Bennington's community water system. I've actually worked in this community for roughly 30 years. I'm familiar with its past history and struggles regarding its community drinking water supply system. I think an adequate summary could be it's a large system, but it has significant technical, financial, managerial challenges. For the audience and for the boards, they understand in Vermont there's only 10 water systems, approximately 10 water systems that are over 10,000 in population and size. Roughly 80% of all the community water supply systems in Vermont and in the nation are serve populations of fewer than 350 year-round residential users. Because of those statistics, funding packages from the federal government to the state and consequently our prioritization systems in Vermont typically direct funding for capital improvement projects to small water systems that are perceived as being struggling more than larger systems because they have less economy of scale to spread costs over. The truth of the matter is that is not, I think, an appropriate representation when it comes down to risk. Very simply, in this particular grant opportunity to develop a lead reduction strategy. Lead in drinking water systems was very commonly used in the late 1800s through the early 1900s to the 1950s. Galvanized piping replaced basically straight lead at that time, but lead solder was used with copper piping right up through to the middle 80s. There is no amount of lead that's good in the human digestion system. It affects inability to learn, it affects respiratory issues. We could go on and on about the public health impact. But when it comes to providing safe drinking water to the end users, it's all really about what's the quality of the water at your faucet when you take that glass of water. Now, for the last 30 years, the projects that I've worked on with the town of Bennington had really been on the development of practical capital improvements plans, long-range planning and implementation strategies that would enable the community to leverage opportunities to do projects instead of you need to fix the water line today and then all of a sudden you're under a schedule of compliance to correct the sewer line tomorrow. We would arrange it so that we could coordinate the schedule so that while the road cut was open, you could do the water, you could do the sewer, you could maybe coordinate, better utilize your funding locally, do the sidewalks at the same time. With this particular issue, it's complicated. We know that the town of Bennington has been implementing corrosion control treatment at the water plant since 1978. Those corrosion control activities that principally prevent lead from resolubilizing from lead piping or piping that contains lead solder or maybe lead fixtures at the faucet in the homes is reduced by the corrosivity of the water and paying attention to that. We've known that for years. This is principally the basis of the federal and state regulations to how we protect public health when it comes to lead or copper concentrations. That being said, and principally because of information that's now commonly available as a result of Flint, Michigan, and other things, we know that there's no amount of lead that's safe and that the best thing to do would be to get the lead out. If there's lead and you know it's present, just simply take it out. That being said, the community water systems distribution mains don't contain lead. The lead piping that we're talking about of concern is lead piping that's owned by the individuals, your customers, that you're providing water to. So the topic subject is one of service lines. Whose service lines are lead, whose are not lead, whose may be galvanized, who's more vulnerable than another. In tackling this problem to develop a strategy to remove lead, you have to first identify your top priorities for where you need to remove lead. This lead strategy was about identifying and mapping high priority locations or services that have lead, and then brainstorming ways to provide information to the public so that they would know whether they had lead service lines or not, and then essentially asking the public for help if they had better information than maybe the public water supply had to help them make their inventories more accurate. My purpose for coming here today was simply to do two things. The lead grant that was applied for by the town of Bennington approximately a year ago, about February 2017, has essentially, the project is winding up. We haven't got a final submittal of the lead reduction strategy yet, but the work that we've seen preliminarily is quite fantastic. It's really, I think, going to be used as a model for many water systems across Vermont. I'm very excited about it. I wanted to come and let you and your community members know how very proud of yourself that you should be, and that I hope you really consider the next approach, and we can successfully implement some sort of a program of implementing not only a long-term strategy, but somewhat of a shorter-term practical strategy to try to get the lead out. And that's it.
Can we get a royalty for the template that we were creating? Sorry. I had to ask.
As long as Liam can collect, some appropriate percentage for his efforts.
Most people don't realize that, lead comes from many, many different sources, and we talk a lot about lead paint or lead in soil and different sources like that, but EPA projects up to 20% of the lead consumption is through drinking water. And for infants, that we are getting baby formula made with water, and it may be 60% of their total intake. And since we know that lead affects their IQ and their health issues, it's very important to remove lead and to remove lead concentrations as much as possible. That being said, again, I'd leave it. The town of Bennington is in compliance with all state and federal regulations regard to the provision of the drinking water that they have with concern to lead.
That's good. Thank you. Are you going to revisit the grant and how much it was and all of that type of stuff?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll just start by reminding people what a service line is, just to give some people some perspective of where we expect to see lead in a water system. So as Tim mentioned, the town of Bennington's water mains do not contain lead. The areas which could come in contact with drinking water are the service line, either on the town side or the customer side, or inside the house with lead containing solder or lead containing fixtures. So just to remind people, a service line is what comes from the main, and the part of the service line that is owned by the town is between the main and the curb stop, which is at the edge of the right-of-way, and that part of the service line that is owned by the customer is that the remainder between the water shutoff and the house. So one of the difficulties with, particularly with the goal of getting lead out of a water system, is that it requires participation not just by the community water system itself, but also by the individual user. Up until recently, and as early as the 70s, the town of Bennington has taken a proactive approach of removing town-owned lead service lines. So many of the original service lines that were placed into service that were partly owned by the town, many of them have been removed. About a year ago, the practice of doing what was called a partial lead service line replacement has essentially been stopped because it was found to disturb the service line and potentially release more lead into a water system for a period of time into the customer's home. So those partial lead service lines have ceased. So it's now, for the remaining town-owned lead service lines, it's incumbent to get the customer participation in the removal of that full service line. What we undertook, which was the largest portion of this grant, was both a lead service line and town distribution main mapping in the areas where lead service lines were known. The two principal sources of information that we received and used to develop this map were town employee information, which was done in 2016. They basically took all 3,600 plus services that are the town of Bennington's service connections, and the employees went through and remembered where they encountered lead and where they also remember replacing the town's portion of the lead service line. So we had that data set, and then fortunately as well, we had collected a very important data set of archives, or 2 books, which included all the service connections that were installed between 1882 and 1983. So approximately 100 years of service line connections throughout the town of Bennington, which identify the location, the address, the diameter, the length, and the actual material type that was installed at the time. And
Where was that found then?
so the town of one of the town employees was on light duty over the winter, and they organized the records room. And while we're in the middle of trying to figure out how to identify all the appropriate lead service lines in town, Larry shows up with these 2 books and says, "Hey, do you think these are useful?"
Amazing.
And then several people in the office painstakingly went through and hand recorded into Excel every single line that was in there. So really kind of amazing bit of archive that we were able to use to sort of both validate the town's experience through their staff, as well as identify anything that may or may not have been, that we may not have flagged. Essentially what we discovered in that time period is that between 1882 and 1929, the majority of lead service lines, or the last lead service line that was installed in the town of Bennington, was approximately 1929. So some of our presumption is that any house constructed after 1929 and connected to the town system very likely does not have a lead service line. Just for a point of reference, the town, federal ban on lead service lines was 1985. The results were that we had, in essence, this is the summary of results. As we noted from some home investigations, we did approximately 65 home investigations where we visually inspected the service line to see whether we could see if there was a lead service line in, and then conducted additional testing to see if the testing results would yield the possibility of a lead service line that we do not see. And from that, we determined that approximately 50% of the lead service lines that we anticipated were lead service lines based on the records research were, in fact, had already been replaced at some point in its lifespan. However, we estimate from all of this data that between 127 and 627 service lines in the town of Bennington are fully lead. 267 to 962 have a customer lead only, meaning that the town's side has been replaced and that the only portion of lead service line that's remaining is the customer-owned side of the lead service line. So in all, we, out of the total approximately 3,600 home units that are connected to the town, we have somewhere between 400 and 1,500 service lines that still contain some portion of lead service line. So the scale of the problem is between big and really big, or the amount of lead service lines that are there. So what we estimated from this was that in the best case, that only half of the lead service lines that we believe are lead based on our records research are lead, and that no unknown service lines contain any lead. And that the worst case is that all the lead service lines are still lead service lines, and all the unknown service lines are also lead service lines. So that's where we're coming up with that estimate. We have developed a web page. So this is not the greatest, it doesn't show up that well, but what we've done is color-coded all of the connections in the town of Bennington as either having a fully lead service line, a customer-owned lead service line, or some form of unknown or not lead. This is going to be made available by a web app that people can. So we'll click on, and there's a web page.
first.
Oh, okay, sorry, we're going to zoom in on downtown just to show people what it looks like. So you can see the orange is what we anticipate are fully lead, and the less orange are customer-led service lines. The remaining are either unknown or not lead. One thing we want to point out is that, while we've identified units as being these items, based on the fact that the recorded information is the best guess that we have, I think it's very important to note that we're showing the information that we believe is as accurate as we can get, but we have provided a web page that educates people on lead service lines and also provides them with access to a web app where they can zoom in on their dwelling or unit, which we'll hopefully show in a moment.
Do we have Wi-Fi here?
Oh, we don't.
What's the password?
Okay. Technical difficulties, you know. I'll talk about what it is and then we'll show it. You can actually zoom in on your unit or the unit that you're dwelling or your place of business, and you can look at the classification, and if you have information that you believe that it should be changed, there's going to be a submission page that you can submit your information, and we can update the maps. So I think it's really important in putting this information out there that people interact with it so that we can have so that the town can have the most accurate information available so that we understand where all the lead service lines are. We'll keep talking because I know that this is a long meeting. So Tom, you had asked briefly what the scope and the cost of the lead service line grant covered. So it was in 5 parts. It was in 4 parts. The first part was the mapping part, so this is the result that you're looking at. The second part is using that information to create a lead service line replacement program. The third was to create funding opportunities or to research and identify funding opportunities, and then the last was to do public outreach. And public outreach in this specific case is presenting to you the information that we have, as well as creating an interactive page that people can access this information. The total cost of the grant, offering of the grant was $80,000 with a $20,000 in-kind town match. So the town's greatest participation, well, I'm sorry, it was $100,000 of the $20,000 match. So $80,000 was provided by the state and $20,000 was provided by the town's in-kind match. The town's largest participation was in mapping with our survey crew all of the service lines and mains that were located in the service area that we provided. So in addition to identifying all of these dwellings, we also have essentially a complete and accurate map of the majority of the downtown water lines at this point. So that the town also has that as its disposal.
Great. The town, I guess I'm concerned, we have this information now, subject to confirmation by property owner, et cetera, et cetera. Now that we have this information, are we put at some kind of risk, liability otherwise? Because we haven't talked about the dollar remediation part of it. And I think that, the state suggests that we're in compliance, but, what happens?
Would you like me to?
Sure, Tim.
The answer to that is I don't believe so. Okay. I think this is an issue where acting responsibly is what's the expectation by the public. Currently established state and federal law simply say you need to collect drinking water samples from your highest risk lead locations. And in many communities, when I ask the question, do you have any lead service lines, the answer may be no, verbally, but the real answer is, I don't know. We don't have any records. where we're heading and what we're doing is very specific monitoring protocols to establish and identify lead service lines in locations where individuals may not have identified them to exist before. So the cost of those services in identifying those locations is very expensive. That work has now been done by the town of Bennington as part of the grant, and coincidentally, very fortunately, able to verify a lot of that very good information by records that happen to be available. That's quite outstanding and really puts you quite far ahead of most other communities with this issue. I believe because of issues, this is another emerging environmental issue. Because of Flint, Michigan, we're going to see fairly significant changes in federal and state law that are going to have a consequence. But I do also believe that there's going to be funding that's going to be available, a different way of looking at enabling communities that are prepared to do so to remove lead service lines, and those that are prepared to do so are going to be able to take advantage of those types of programs before other communities that are not ready to do so. And from that standpoint, that is why we were excited to offer the lead grant to the town of Bennington.
That's helpful, very helpful. Thanks.
So just in brief, to finish out the education part of this is that if you do have a lead service line, that there are options for reducing, there are sort of immediate options for reducing your exposure to lead, drinking cold water instead of hot, because hot water dissolves lead more quickly than cold water does.
Hot water from the tap.
Right?
Hot water from the tap.
That's correct. We're talking about tap water from your tap if it contains a lead service line. Running the water so that it's fresh, and flushing water so that you get more water from the main as opposed to water that's been sitting and interacting with the lead service line, and then installing a filter that removes lead, and which is not necessarily a permanent solution, but it also has to be maintained. And then lastly, of course, just replacing the line. So, what we are developing and working to finish developing here is some replacement program options. We are aware that there is some EPA funding that's been allocated for this type of activity. It hasn't been released yet for application. We believe that with the basis of this work, that the town of Bennington is in a good position to be a recipient of that funding. We don't know what the match requirements are and what the obligations are at this point, but I think we can, there again, we seem to be well positioned. We've identified a pretty reasonably sized scale issue that needs to be solved and that could benefit from some EPA grant funding. Secondly, Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund with the state of Vermont has now allowed for private assets to be eligible for SRF funding. That change has been completed to specifically allow for customer-owned lead service lines to be replaced. Currently, that would be a one-to-one loan, so whatever dollar is borrowed is also would need to be paid back. There is some murmur, however, that there may be some incentivizing that happens through the SRF program where at least partial or all costs associated with replacing lead service lines would be essentially forgiven. We haven't gotten any confirmation yet that that would happen, but there again, it's possible that we could seek that funding if it becomes available. And then lastly, not receiving any outside funding, contemplating essentially allocating a certain portion of the a certain portion of the capital improvements funds that the town identifies every year for its own capital improvement assets as providing a low or 0% interest loan to customers to get their lead service lines replaced and have it paid back over a period of time. So those are just some concepts at this point for how we may begin to address some of these issues. And I believe that's the end of our presentation. So,
That's good.
I apologize for the technology failure, but the website will go live tomorrow. It is a part of the Town of Bennington's webpage, and I encourage everybody to visit and promote it widely. And if you see your house or your place of business and you have information that differs from what's on the plan, please contact so that we can get that plan updated.
Great. I mean, with Tim and your presentations, I think we've been really given a real basic framework of educating ourselves. So the community should be, one, advised of the potential, but also not to think the train's coming off the track, because we're just establishing the track at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, we are in compliance. I heard you say several times, and yet that's not good enough. We need, as a community, we need to deliver the best water we can and the best health outcomes we can for our people. So it's great that we're in compliance, and I'm very happy about that, but I think we do need to aggressively pursue a strategy where everybody knows that they're getting clean water. So I have 3 specific questions. One, and they may fall mainly to you, Tim, but should individuals who find themselves on that map, should they be testing their water? Is there a water testing regimen that people should go through individually, and can the state subsidize that or make it somehow more affordable, as happened with PFOA?
A water test for lead is about $15. It can be taken from a Vermont certified laboratory, such as the Vermont Department of Health. And the homeowner will then know what their lead concentration is at their home from their faucet. It's important through lead education, which the public water supplier already has some legal responsibilities with regard to disseminating information as part of an annual consumer confidence report. And as part of their monitoring strategies, when they identify higher concentrations of lead, they're required to provide lead education to those homeowners. That same information can be available to homeowners generally on the town's website. What Jason was talking about earlier, for instance, the best situation would be if we didn't have any lead in the components in the water system at all. Distribution system, service line, including in-home plumbing and the fixtures that the water is delivered through. The cost of replacing all of that infrastructure is hard to really get your head wrapped around it. If you're a homeowner, you might not feel that you can afford to do any of these things. That being said, there are low-cost approaches that you can undertake, such as flushing your water and running your water until it's cool, putting a carbon-based filter on the faucet head itself, where you're getting your drinking water from. I see those as short-term approaches before you can resolve the actual problem that you're grappling with. But the services and assistance through the Vermont Department of Health is available to each homeowner.
Great. And $15 seems like it's not a prohibitively high thing. So if you're concerned about finding yourself on that map, the test is available to you. But let me press you. I know the meeting's getting late, but this is a really important issue for our community, I think. Let me press you on the CDC's recommendation, as I read them, just very briefly, is to, if you have a lead service line or partial lead service line, to run your largest diameter tap, so like your bathroom tub, for 5 minutes, and then run your kitchen sink for 2 minutes to make sure that you completely flush, and then collect water and set that water aside and use that for your drinking and your cooking and your tea and coffee and whatnot throughout the day. It strikes me that that would be a lot of, if everybody did that was infected, that was potentially affected, that would be a tremendous strain on our water system in terms of the number of volume of gallons that would be flushing through our system. And yet, it's really the best recommendation for how to flush your system if you might have lead in it.
It's very difficult for scientists and engineers to answer a question when they're trying to be very specific, like you were with times and flows. But you can understand that the building that you're providing water to, whether it's a 2-inch service or a 3/4-inch service, there's a lot more water in that in the larger service than the smaller service. And if you're just one little old man or a little old woman living in that residence, you might have to let your water run an awfully long time to get the water to run cool. But generally, what we know through testing is that when you turn the water in the faucet on, if you were to grab a sample of water and set it in number 1 position, then take another sample of and put it in number 2 position, you're going to see your highest concentrations of lead immediately in that first sample of water. And as you go forward, you're going to see lesser concentrations of lead. And it's that type of an approach that will tell you how much of an issue do you have. Do you have a lead service line or not? Are you just dealing with lead solder? But generally speaking, if you turn on the faucet and you let the water run until you feel a temperature change, so you're not drinking warm water, you've removed probably the largest component of the lead.
Okay.
And that will be what the Vermont Department of Health directs each homeowner to do when they're collecting a sample. If they take an initial sample of lead and the concentration is elevated, they will talk to the homeowner and they will ask them to collect another sample under a different scenario so that they will have those results for them specifically.
Well, and so if we do have individuals that have lead serving their houses, we want them to take every reasonable precaution to be reducing the lead in their drinking water.
We want our drinking water users, consumers, to be safe, and we want to give them the best information we can. And I believe that's what the town of Bennington has tried to do by stepping forward and trying to optimize their approach with drinking water quality all the way from the water treatment plant through the distribution system. And this represents the last component of really that most complicated part of that commitment, is getting it now from the public water system to the end user through lines that are beyond the ownership and the direct control of the public water supplier.
This is my last question, Tom. Thank you for your indulgence. If I could ask, are there any communities so we have a system where some people are on meters and some people pay a flat rate. So I would imagine that if you're on a meter, you would tend to not want to run the water. You would tend to, you'd be less likely to do a proper flushing before you drink the water. Are there any examples of communities that have, on an interim basis, allowed people that have lead service lines to be on some sort of a flat fee instead of using a meter, or is that just?
I don't know of anybody that's made that correlation from metering to.
So if I can just pull you down to perspective on what it would take to actually flush that line. And we did this with a series of houses. We did a line flush, and we estimated the number of liters inside that line from the tap to the main. And you're talking about somewhere between 8 and 15 liters for a normal household. So when you're that volume of water is actually pretty small compared to basically running a load of laundry, running your dishwasher, any one of those regular household activities is going to flush that line just under normal circumstances.
Yeah, and I apologize. The CDC is 5 minutes full bathtub. That's maybe an overly cautious recommendation, but.
Well, maybe from
so a 5-minute a typical kitchen sink will give you, I believe, like 5 liters a minute. So if you're talking about 5 minutes, you're talking about 25 liters. So that's, I'm trying to remember my conversion rate for gallons right now to pull it into imperial. But it's still a relatively small quantity of water that you need to do that.
I think it's time to move on. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. Do we have any action item responsibility at this point?
No, not at this point. I think that the staff will continue to work with MSK and the state to really understand the program opportunities and the funding opportunities for the future and determine how best to go forward. I should note that most of our multifamily units are now metered. Our single-family units tend not to be metered.
Okay.
We have very few that have decided to put in a meter for their own purposes, so that the meter issue really, it falls to the apartment owner, perhaps more than the individual apartment dweller.
Thank you for that.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very much.
gentlemen. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming down.
Really appreciate you
Yeah.
coming down.
Thank you.
All the
Sorry to
driving.
hold you up. Next item on the agenda, 209 Pleasant Valley Road. There was a bid that was entered, it was tabled for last meeting, and it's time to take action on the bid. What is your pleasure, folks? That's what Stu is waiting for.
Carson, do you have any report for us? You saw the place.
Well, hopefully at this point, I'm not the only one who went and saw it. I think some others did as well.
Let's talk from the outside.
I'm getting an echo on my microphone.
Sound fine.
Is that okay? The reason I took a pause was the hope that coverage in the Bennington Banner, or kind of just coverage in general, might bring some other people to bear to go out and look at that property, because I might be mistaken, but the way it was offered was through the Bennington Banner. Maybe it was offered on the website as well, which hopefully it was. If you miss the Bennington Banner that it was in there, or if you're not paying attention to the website, you might still be interested, and it shouldn't be shame on the person for not seeing it in the Bennington Banner. We should be looking for whichever way we can maximize the amount of income coming back to the town for what I perceive as an asset. And so hopefully there's some people that are going to come forward if we open the bid process up to, put an interest back into that home or this property.
If I may?
Please.
As a matter of fact, Carson, I went and spoke to Stu about this the other day, and I wanted to pass this by the rest of you in addressing, this dearth of, or lack of bids for properties. So if something is coming up as a tax sale, I think we ought to present it at a select board meeting with photographs, diagrams of the property, and really educate the public, and therefore hopefully foster more and better bids. What do you think?
I'm all for it. I will say in inspecting the house, from a very layman perspective, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but it would appear to me that multiple acres in a great area of town on a nice road should deem a lot more than, I think the offer was $12,500. That's just my very uninformed opinion. It just, based on real estate in the area, that would seem to be worth more than that.
And it's our job to keep a sharp pencil in matters like this and really make sure that we are doing the best we can for the town. But I do feel like I've heard from the town that I feel very strongly that we need to unload this one way or the other before winter. The fact that they're over there pumping out the cellar every week or two, and the fact that there's ongoing problems with locks or whatever, that the place is getting worse and worse by the minute. I would really like to see our town not spending any more money keeping that place open while we try to sell it. But I mentioned this to you, Tom. I don't know if the board would have any appetite for this, but it does feel to me like a fair policy on this would be, when we have to dispose of an asset, we come up with a minimum bid, we put out an RFP, we take the bids. If we don't have a bid that hits the minimum bid, and the only bids that come in are below our minimum, then we have an automatic policy that goes to auction. And that way, not only has there been exposure, but there's been some sense in the community of what the property is going to go for. And then there's an open auction that anybody can go to and put cash on the barrel, or however the auction runs.
Perfect.
And I think we could probably do that fairly quickly in this instance if we wanted to. The risk, of course, is that the one person who put in a proposal could go to that auction and get it for less. But it would be a true way of testing market value.
I'm not opposed to an auction that has the ability to put some marketing behind it, and we know when it's coming. I just think to date, people may have not been informed, and I think maybe we saw that. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience here who's interested in the property, but it's something where I think an auction, that was a loaded statement, I knew they were here.
We're very interested in property for residents. These two just got married and looking to buy something to fix up and put back, you know, in the community, and they're gonna live here, and it's not gonna be something, we're gonna clean up the eyesore and fix it right, and that's why we want to make a bid on it.
And that's where something right now is, we kind of put a pause on this to this meeting. I know bids weren't being accepted up until this meeting, which maybe we should have clarified that in the last meeting, that bids would be accepted, but I have no problem, you know, doing an open auction on this. It's fine, but I also think we should at least open the bid process back up for, you know, a certain period of time, whether it be whatever's official, 2 weeks or to the next meeting. I just want to get something here.
Could do
where-
that, but if it doesn't exceed our minimum required, it feels to me like, how do we know which bid to accept then? So it feels to me like we should have a standard that we all live by and that everybody in the community understands, you know, something predictable. So, and it feels to me like we may have trouble getting to the minimum, but if somebody did get to the minimum, that we should not then renegotiate. We should take that bid. We've set our minimum, we take that bid. If we're below the minimum, then it kicks it off to auction. So I'd like to see the town staff send this immediately to a public auction.
Stuart, is there any reason why that wouldn't be acceptable in your mind?
Well, obviously,
we have to reject.
We felt that we had 2 public auctions because this went to tax sale twice and had no bids.
With a minimum being quite high.
Well, at the time, it wasn't as high as it ended up now because of the time that has elapsed. But nonetheless, Dan and I have talked about a process whereby we could conduct an auction at the town offices in the conference room, give an appropriate notice on the website and via the banner within a matter of a couple of weeks. I think we could state the minimum bid, but it's unlikely that we'll get the minimum bid because of the deteriorated condition of the property.
I think I might, you know, just to keep the conversation, but this should be without reserve, because, you know, then you're right back to where we've been for 2 different times if you have a minimum bid, because that's like a reserve.
Agreed.
So
Wipe the reserve.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is it. It's going out the door or not. Maybe I'm missing something, but it just seems like if we're, you know, rebid it or auction with a bid, we're going to be right back where we unfortunately been for too long, Stu. I would just say, auction it off, get the word out. If someone is interested, fine. But we do have a pending bid that we have to say we're not accepting. I mean, that's that's what the board wants to do. So, because that was a motion that was tabled, so I think before we even get to that process, we should decide, do we want to accept, the motion is to accept the bid that was before the select board. Are we in favor of, and I guess it would be a yes means you are, or no means you're not. So let's, yes, signify by aye. 7, no. And that means that the bid would be denied. Now we go to the next part. What do we want to do with the property? And I think that's something we're talking about for this property, but also going forward so that you get a broader audience.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about having an auction as ASAP pursuant to the terms of what Stu just mentioned, except for the without reserve?
The goal would be to have the auction and bring back a bid to you folks on January 14th.
Yep.
I think if we go that route, we need to make sure that we are in agreement that we abide by that process. So I think it's unfair to change the rules too many times on this, and I imagine that the potential bidder already feels like we've changed the rules once. But my perspective on this would be it was a bid below the minimum bid. And so maybe the minimum bid was set too high, but it was based on what the taxes were, due. So that's how we set it. It feels to me like if we go this auction route, we need, as a group, we need to acknowledge that the bidding process might lead to more, because now people know about it, now they know what the range is, maybe these folks will show up. It might also lead to less. It might be that we end up getting 5,000 for the place instead of 12,000.
Or none.
Or, well, I suppose none, but then we, yeah.
Let's say with a higher, pretty
Degree of
strong
confidence.
amount of confidence in this, looking at this one example, that's not going to happen. I think putting the process in place makes sense, though. I think the last two properties we've sold, there wasn't much exposure to the properties in advance. And I think having this dialogue automatically increases that. I'm not opposed if we miss the minimum bid to go to auction. And that's more of the process when you look at the, just auction sales in general.
That's what I'm basing it on, yeah.
Bank foreclosures, there's another good example, but you want to put a motion out there or put a...
Do you need a motion? So I would actually like a motion that this become our policy on how we deal with these projects. Starting with this one, I apologize for the fact that it wasn't in place before this one, but starting with this one and going forward, that this become our policy until changed.
Could you recite the policy again?
So that when disposing of assets, we would set a minimum bid, and that if the minimum bid is met or exceeded, we consider and accept one of those. If the minimum bid is not accepted, then I'm sorry, Nancy, this needs to be shorter.
That's all right.
Just keep going. If the minimum bid is not met at a public auction, that we send the property with due notice to public auction.
Without reserve.
Without reserve.
Can I ask a question? How would the minimum bid be calculated? To me, this property is acres. We still don't know how many acres,
It's
so.
3.29 acres.
3.2, okay. Okay. For a rural location, right, okay. So I guess how would we come up with a value?
The minimum bid would be the taxes that are due.
Back taxes.
That's it? Not the value of the land?
no.
Okay.
And that's why it's somewhat flawed in this situation, is that maybe more is owed in the taxes. It got ahead of us a little bit, and more was owed in the taxes than potentially the property is worth. But
That's unfortunate.
I think based on Carson's reaction a while ago, this was, to the previous sale that we went through, I heard you say a couple of people approached you afterwards and said, oh, if I'd known that was going for $5,000, I would have offered 6 or 10 or 15 or something. So
It can be easily missed. I'm not saying we need,
You can't
it's
spoon
not,
feed people.
yeah, I respect that.
Right.
But I also think in selling town assets, this is our responsibility to try to get a value that, is more beneficial to the people of this community. And just this very exercise is helping bring out more people, and maybe more awareness in the future. So,
Nancy, did I give you that motion in a
Don't ask me to repeat it.
sufficiently
Coherent.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on it? Any
Probably
more
needs a second.
questions? A second?
Do we want a time frame on the auctions?
Do we have a second? This person. Okay.
Chad seconded.
Chad, thanks, Chad. Questions, do we need a time?
Timeline for
Auction.
an auction. I mean,
Yeah.
what's appropriate? 2 weeks?
What? Yeah.
But I mean, a policy as far as when it comes back to us, like how long do you want the auction to?
I suggested after due exposure, but, I think the town maybe could decide. In this situation, I think there's a reason to really push the exposure out and get the thing to auction as quickly as possible. I could imagine a situation where that might not be as imminent. I'd rather let the town staff decide that.
Availability, stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
Does that work?
Yes. Well, I'm planning to be back to you on January 14th.
Great. But then all you're doing is reporting the sale.
I'm reporting what the bid is. You folks will still have to make the decision to accept the offer. Unless you're going to give the manager the authority to accept the offer.
Wait, if we send it out to auction, then we still wouldn't?
Yeah. You want to, no.
Whoever wins.
No reserve.
Right, so then,
So there's nothing to accept?
Yep, just tell us to report back. That's all.
You got it.
Okay, all in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Everybody, says 7? Thanks. So be it. We will move on to the manager's report.
I have 2 action items for you tonight. Both are very straightforward. The first is a certificate of approval for a salvage yard. This is a standard 5-year certificate. It does require the signatures of the select board. Unfortunately, the form only gives us 6 lines, so I circulate it for signature. This is in compliance with our current land use regulations and those of the state.
This is already up there. I mean, this yard is not brand new. Yeah, I thought it was. Okay.
And while that is being circulated, Bennington Project Independence has approached the town about applying to the USDA Rural Development Authority for the ability to purchase shares in a community solar project.
Sounds great to me.
At the present time, there is not a specific project mentioned, but this does require support by the town in the application process, and I'm looking for a motion to authorize the manager to sign on behalf of the board.
And in no way commits our community to provide financial support to any project, which is important. A motion, please?
So moved.
Yes. Second. A discussion on the motion?
Yes, why does it require
The USDA, the application process requires municipal support.
Okay.
Any further? All set? Signify aye. 7 in favor. Thank you, Stu.
Okay, that is it for me.
Okay, other business starting. Jean, you want to take a run?
I just wanted to congratulate the Bennington Community Theater for their incredible production of the play they did last weekend.
Hear, hear.
It's great, fantastic.
I wanted to offer a quick reminder to the community that we still are accepting business plans and are in the RFP process for the garages, the 2 town garages. I think that's open to January 1st? Or
January 1st.
January 1st. So for entrepreneurs or business owners that are looking to expand into the downtown, we are looking to get those buildings occupied, or there's a lot of different things we're looking at, whether it be resale or getting the buildings to the right people, but we're still open to a lot of creative ideas, so take the time to submit those bids.
I'm going to be hosting a Coffee with Jim at the Brown Cow Cafe, 1 o'clock this coming Saturday, to meet with my constituents from District 2-2 and to talk about some of the legislation that I've started to work on that would address assistance for child daycare. Currently, for one child in the state of Vermont, the average cost per child is $14,000 a year. The other piece of legislation is keeping and attracting both teachers and nurses in the state of Vermont. Tom D. told me last week that by 2025, we are going to have a deficit of 7,000 nurses in the state of Vermont, and I've got some ideas about how to keep and attract them. So I hope you'll come and talk and listen, and I'll listen and talk as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Maybe us from 2-1 will come heckle you or something like that.
Try it.
We get an awful lot of stuff that we read, and a lot of it doesn't actually make it onto television, but I feel like one of the things that was really nice to read in the BCIC, BCRC report was that of the building communities grants, there were $600,000 that went out around the state, and our team managed to bring in $100,000 of that for Bennington County. Yeah. So that was a real win, and really shows that group is really hard at it. And the second thing that got kind of buried, it was in the staff report, and you've mentioned it before, Stuart, but I noticed that you called out the everybody on the honor roll, everybody that worked on the wastewater facility for their RBC's work, saving the town over $1 million by doing that work ourselves, and that is just phenomenal. So,
and in fact, the state of Vermont shares your opinion. They couldn't believe that a wastewater department could do that work.
Yeah, our people saved us $1 million by doing the work ourselves.
At least.
I think that sounds like a cottage industry that we ought to explore.
That's it for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Farm these boys out.
Nothing, Chad?
Boys basketball has their home opener tomorrow night and wrestling on Friday night, so come down to the high school and support the winter sports.
Great. Also, the surveys report is closed. So
survey is closed.
Yep. So hope to have a report back for the public consumption or sometime in January.
Probably early January. We're with the holidays, things tend to get bottled up and not move very quickly.
We need a short executive session for a contract matter.
We do.
And it's a matter that's probably, it's not something that we can discuss in public relative to a contract.
Motion to go into executive session for contract matter?
We are meeting December 17th, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Where?
At the town office.
Yeah, we can meet in the conference room at the town office.
Yeah.
It's just other business and warrants. Very short meeting.
6?
6 o'clock. 5:30 if you wish.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second? Okay, we're going into executive session after a 4-minute break.
Okay.